So Canada Post has announced it's going to stop delivering mail door to door in the remaining homes where it still even does that. That's a luxury apparently they can't afford because they're losing more than $1 million a day as a company. So they're cutting out the frills, like delivering mail. You can go pick it up at a big collective mailbox now. Oh, and they're raising the price of a stamp too, to $1. I swear I thought this was a satirical news report when I first heard it. I mean, mail delivery that doesn't deliver, but jacking up the price of a stamp from 63 cents to $1. That's more than a 50% increase for a decrease in service. Well, the good news is, if you don't like this post office, you can always use another post office. Yeah, I'm just joking. Under the law, it's illegal for anyone to even offer to try to deliver the mail. Here, let me read to you from Parliament's Canada Post Corporation Act. It's the law. Here's Section 14, sub 1 of the law. It says, subject to Section 15, the corporation, that means Canada Post, has the sole and exclusive privilege of collecting, transmitting, and delivering letters to the addressee thereof within Canada. So it's pretty simple. It's not just that the post office is a government agency that has received massive subsidies from taxpayers in the past, and that a raise in the price of a stamp is really indistinguishable from the raising of a tax. It's that no one is even allowed to try to compete with them. So, for example, the CBC is another Crown corporation. It's a money-losing Crown company as well. It doesn't lose $1 million a day. It loses $3 million a day, and far fewer Canadians use the CBC than use the post office. I mean, let me prove it to you. Every year, the post office delivers about 10 billion pieces of letter mail. And there are about 34 million Canadians, including children and babies. So that works out to about 300 pieces of mail per year per person. Let's roughly call that one piece of mail per day per Canadian, even though they only deliver on weekdays. Now compare that to the CBC. Their flagship shows, their national newscasts, regularly get less than 1 million viewers a day. I mean, it fluctuates, but on any given day, 50 Canadians get 50 pieces of mail. But out of 50 Canadians, only one watches Peter Mansbridge's big show. That's crazy. I mean, the only thing crazier than a government post office that doesn't deliver mail is a government TV show that nobody watches. At least you don't have to buy a stamp if you don't send a letter, but you still have to subsidize the CBC even if you don't watch it. But on the plus side, there's no equivalent to Section 14 of the Canada Post Corporation Act. Private TV and radio stations are still allowed to compete against the CBC. Now, let me read just a couple more sections from the post office law. Here's Section 14(2). It says, nothing in this act shall be construed as requiring any person to transmit by post any newspaper, magazine, book, catalog, or goods. Well, thank God for small mercies. Imagine if you could only ship goods by Canada Post, or if your daily newspaper had to come to you by snail mail. You'd get Monday's newspaper on Thursday, maybe. But even as I say that, I realize that these days fewer and fewer people are getting a paper version of a newspaper at all. I mean, newer technologies are making people switch away from paper newspapers and even magazines and books altogether. They're reading the news on their computers or their cell phones, and people who still read books are often doing so on little electronic book readers. My point is, the entire information age is changing. I write for newspapers. The industry is in deep trouble. Every single newspaper company in Canada is figuring out how to survive in the electronic era. Many are laying off staff. Some newspapers are even shutting down, and more surely will. It's terrible if you're in the industry. But I've never heard of a newspaper cutting what it offers in half at the same time as jacking up the price by 50%. Only a government post office would think of doing that. But let me quote from Section 15 of the Canada Post Act. Those are the exceptions to the ban on competition. It's a list. Let me read just a few for fun. The exclusive privileges of Canada Post don't cover, Section A, letters carried incidentally and delivered to the addressee thereof by a friend of the sender or addressee. So your friend can hand deliver a Christmas card, but only if he's a friend of yours. Yeah, that's in the law. And here's one. This is Section 15E. Letters of an urgent nature that are transmitted by a messenger for a fee, at least equal to an amount that is 3 times the regular rate of postage payable for delivery in Canada of similarly addressed letters weighing 50 grams. So that means courier packages. But you're only allowed to courier stuff if it's urgent, and only if they charge triple what Canada Post does. Of course, the courier and package business is actually booming. Federal Express earned nearly $500 million profit in the last 90 days alone. Now, I don't know what to do to save the post office. I am not a business guru. Maybe it cannot be saved. It's all part of the same problem caused by these new technologies. I mean, economists call it creative destruction. What I mean by that is just like the Model T Ford put a lot of horse and buggy people out of business, and email has helped put the telegram business out of business. Maybe we're just moving on to the next technology, downloading books over the internet, getting our bank statements and utility bills by email instead of snail mail. I mean, that's not a bad thing for consumers. Maybe the future of the post office is the same as the future for some newspapers, a smaller, leaner company with fewer expensive services. Except no one is forced to subsidize newspapers, and no one is banned from competing with them. So that's my simple proposal today. I'm not going to second guess the management decisions at Canada Post. I'm just going to say, why should I have any more stake in the future of the post office than I have a stake in the future of any other business? Just scrap Section 14 of the Canada Post Corporation Act, remove their monopoly, let FedEx compete, hell, let your morning paper boy compete. You'll get your mail before 7 a.m., won't you? And once the monopoly status is gone, well, then sell the Canada Post to whomever. Hell, sell it to the postal workers themselves. As usual, the Postal Workers Union is complaining about these proposed changes because big layoffs are coming with the end of door-to-door delivery. Great, sell the post office to the highest bidder. And that just might be the Postal Workers Union. I mean, they know the business better than anyone else, right? Great, sell the post office to them. Maybe Canada Post, if it were privatized, would do what many newspapers are doing themselves, selling their prestigious real estate to make ends meet. Their gorgeous corporate offices in Ottawa alone would fetch hundreds of millions of dollars. Look at that place. I remember not long ago when Canadians cared deeply about the post office. A strike would genuinely discombobulate our lives. Businesses would be in trouble. I think of the magazine I used to publish years ago, and people who needed checks by mail, like seniors waiting for a pension check. But those two examples I just gave are so old-fashioned now, aren't they? I mean, a post office strike today would just be the final nudge to a lot of people to finally go out and buy an e-reader for books and magazines. And even low-tech seniors have figured out how automatic bank deposits work. Like most Canadians, I don't hate the mail at all. This isn't like the bruising strikes of the past. I think Canadians just don't care anymore. Hell, raise the price of stamps to $2. I really wasn't planning on buying any anyways. I'll just send an email instead. If the Conservative government repealed the monopoly powers of the post office, would anyone complain or even notice?